Hey there everyone, it's Austin Bach and we are back doing a vintage cube draft. Yeah, the vintage cube just went live yesterday and it's always fun when it goes up, so we're going to give it a shot today. Taking a break from standard practice for the upcoming GP, just wanted to relax and play some holiday cube. So cards that jump out here, Jace the Mind Sculptor is obviously very powerful, probably the most powerful card in this pack. I mean, there's cards with like super high upside like Eureka. I do like Mox Diamond quite a bit. I've gone down on it a little bit. I don't know if it's quite first pickable, especially over a premium card like Jace. So I think I'm just going to take Jace here. Frantic Search is interesting because Storm is an archetype that I know they were pushing in this cube. Like they added a bunch of rituals in the last update. So that's something that we could look out for. Obviously Jace isn't exactly the pick that goes best with a Storm deck, but something we could still look for if it's open. It's a playable card in that archetype. Treasure Cruise is good. Jace Vryn's Prodigy is very good, so we could take that. I like Jace a lot. It goes in multiple different archetypes. You can play it in Control, you can play it in Reanimator, you can play it in like Blue-Red Tempo. It's just a very, very powerful card. It does Nombo a little bit with Jace. Actually, maybe that's not true. I think they changed now that I think about it, they changed the legendary rule on Planeswalkers, didn't they? So you can have multiple different Jaces and play at the same time. So never mind. Not a Nombo at all. Yeah, I think it's just going to be Jace here. Muldrifter is also very good. Kind of sucks to be passing that, but I do think Jace is a better card. Watergrave is also notable. Just very strong packs we've been seeing so far. But that's the thing with this cube. All the cards are good. Wow, Mana Vault's still in this pack? That card is basically Power 9. Just 1 mana, add 3 mana. Obviously it's basically only once, so it's kind of like a Black Lotus that costs 1 mana. Except it doesn't make colorless, or it doesn't make colored mana. But it sticks around. You can untap it later and reuse that mana later if you want to. So I think this card is very underrated. Not necessarily what you want to be in like a control deck, or in like a blue Planeswalkers slash whatever deck we end up being in, but it's still such a powerful card, I don't see passing up on it. Living Death is pretty powerful, that's really good if you can build around it. And we do have a Jace Vryn's Prodigy, so that's a pretty good start for a Living Death deck. Time Spiral for the Storm deck is pretty good. Sword of Temptation is very strong, but I think it's just Mana Vault here. Now we have some more interesting cards. Elspeth is good, but she's just like a generically strong card, and she's not like a uniquely powerful card, which is more what I'm looking for in Holiday Cubes. You want to go for the higher upside cards and try to find an archetype, find a niche to build and not just play like powerful expensive cards. It's kind of a pitfall of Cube. Mystical Tutor is good, Necromancy is good, Baleful Strix is good. Pretty sure I want to go off color here. I want to take, I mean I do like Necromancy, it works very well with the Jace. We saw that Living Death earlier, and obviously it's still pretty early to tell if an archetype is open. Baleful Strix is also good, even if we end up in Reanimator. That's not a card I'm going to be unhappy to have. And this card's much better if we don't end up in Reanimator. It just protects our Planeswalkers and gets us value guaranteed. So that makes sense to me. Ponder's very good. Mystic Confluence is good. Botanical Sanctum's fine. Not as good as Shockland slash Original Duels plus Fetches, but it's serviceable. Not too much else. I mean, these cards are all good, once again, but I think Ponder works best with what we've got going on right now, which is just blue good stuff slash figure out what we want to do specifically later, whether it's control or some kind of combo-y nonsense or whatever. Nicol Bolas is good. Battlesphere's fine. Phantasmal Image is good. I like Thoughtseize. We could just be blue-black control. Just kind of go low to the ground, cheap interaction. Finish the game off with Planeswalkers. I don't hate that plan. Zealous Conscripts is also really good though. I think this card is extremely underrated somehow, even though it's just always great. Like your opponents are always going to have Planeswalkers that you can steal. It just ends games very fast, even if you're not necessarily an aggro deck. I think this card is very, very, very good. Plus if you end up with any, infinite combo synergies like Splinter Twin or Kiki Jiki. So I'll speculate on the Zealous Conscripts. We have Tezzeret the Seeker. We have Emrakul. What does Tezzeret do again? Searches for an artifact. I mean, it goes and gets a Baleful Strix, right? It's not bad. -2 to protect itself. That's kind of a combo, but probably still not worthwhile unless we have a very heavy artifact theme, which we don't right now. There's not much else in this pack. It's basically that or Hallowed Fountain, but I do value the dual lands very highly. So I think I'm just going to take Hallowed Fountain here. If we do end up white, I'm going to want fixing. Or if we end up in multiple colors somehow. Okay, so St. Traft is fine. Palancron. I mean, again, we could have moved in earlier on Storm, but I didn't really see an opportunity to, or at least good reason to. Vendilion Click I'm not a huge fan of, but it's playable. I like Dismember a lot. It's just very cheap interaction. You do need some interaction, even though this cube isn't necessarily all about, just trading resources and playing a fair game. Blue-black generally does want to do that, even though you don't want to go too heavy on it, because people are going to be doing some nutty things. And nothing much for me here. Myria Angel is underwhelming, even if we did end up white. Museum Mortars, no, I don't think so. Manglehorn I think is better in Holiday Cube than in most cubes, and various other, like Manic Vandal, Destroy Target Artifact, Incidental Hate. I guess I'll just take a Gurmag Angler. Kind of synergizes with what we have. If we end up like blue-black, control-y tempo. Soulfire Grandmaster's fine. Kalidas. Not really sure. It doesn't seem amazing, but fine. Take Badlands in case we end up Grixis. I don't remember where we saw the Nicol Bolas. I don't know if there's a possibility we could wheel it. Probably not, but you never know. We could end up like blue-black splashing Zealous Conscripts and something else. So I'll speculate. Mindslaver, Sower of Temptation. Kind of an interesting pick. Mindslaver's much higher upside, but you kind of want to be doing stuff that's specific to it, like ways to tutor it out, like if we'd taken that Tezzeret earlier. Sower of Temptation, it's just generically more powerful. So I think I'll take that here. Necrotal's pretty good. We didn't see any of the reanimation spells come back around, so someone's probably gonna cut us off on that. Necrotal's a card I wouldn't mind if I was in that plan, but still playable in just a mid-range value deck with like Painful Truths. That's actually a decent payoff for having these off-color dual lands if we do end up blue-black, just to occasionally get the 3 mana draw 3. Especially if we end up with like, if we end up with like a Marsh Flats, for example, then this Hallowed Fountain would basically act as a blue-black dual land if we draw our Marsh Flats. Ooh, we did get the Nicol Bolas back. That's interesting. So there's a possibility. Revelark is fine. Okay, so not unhappy with how that pack went, but still not... We don't have a strong identity right now, which is a little bit of a concern. Because this cube, you really want to know what you're doing and draft to a specific plan, which we don't really have right now. We just have generically good cards. And this pack has a lot of generically good cards. We have 2 pieces of power, Mox Jet and Time Walk, both of which are very strong. Time Walk I think is the better of the two, even considering that we can make use of both, because we would like a black Mox, but Time Walk is on color. It's great with Jace because you can flash it back and get, 2 extra turns. Underground Sea is nice. I would have liked that. But I think actually Underground Sea would be less desirable than Polluted Delta, interestingly, because of our fetch land situation, or our shock land situation, rather. Also of note, this pack, Tamiyo's good. Mesmeric Fiend, probably not where we want to be, but it's playable. But I think it's an easy Time Walk. What do we have here? Another Jace. Pretty good Jace, too. Wouldn't mind having that. Maze of Ith's fine. This is a deck that could take advantage of it, because we're trying to prolong the game and just You know, keep our opponents off balance while we set up our own plan. Kind of just going for a mid-range Planeswalker value deck, which I'm not too unhappy with, but we do need to make sure we get enough one-for-one interaction that that plan will actually work. Namely, cheap counterspells like Mana Leak, Mana Drain if we're lucky, stuff like that. 2 to 3 mana interaction if we can. Repeal is playable, Batterskull's playable. This pack doesn't have anything great, just a bunch of playables. Shallow Grave I don't think we're going to go deep on. I don't love Repeal. That's the only real card here that I'm considering. I think Leviathan is going to be too expensive to cheat out. I mean, if I knew I could get my hands on like a Tinker, maybe I would consider it. But I haven't seen one yet, and it's not like you're guaranteed to see one unless we got lucky and got past one now or opened one in the next pack. So I think I'm just going to take Repeal and not be super happy with it, but it's cheap interaction. Creeping Tar Pit, Inquisition, both good. Boros Signet's off color. Well, it's slightly off color, but it's, you know, it's, I wouldn't want this to be my splash enabler. I think it's just between Creeping Tar Pit and Inquisition. I'm leaning towards the Tar Pit, just because I haven't really paid much attention to my mana base yet, and you do need to have it in mind a bit. Even if we're just going to be mostly base 2 color and with a light splash, I would like to not have to worry about that. And in this cube, you really don't have to worry about playables too much. You're generally going to get everything you need playable-wise. So focusing on your fixing early is something to keep in mind. So I'm going to be looking for cards like counterspells, like I said, Doomblade, esque effects, Go for the Throat, Hero's Downfall, some more card selection, maybe a couple more of those, and then just solid top end cards that double as finishers and ways to stop our opponent from progressing their board state. Doesn't look like we're going to be a pure control deck, even though that's generally what blue-black wants to do. There's a Mana Leak. Pretty happy to pick that up. Ojutai would be pretty good too. That's a pretty nice finisher in a control deck. Just gets around sorcery speed removal. It's a good blocker for our planeswalkers as well. But Mana Leak looks like exactly what we want to do. Also don't know how consistently we'd be able to cast an Ojutai. Not much for me here. Sword of Light and Shadow. This isn't a great sword deck. Dark Petition's interesting, but probably not where we want to be either. So I could take Terminate, even though it's going to be kind of hard to cast. And just maybe, you know, hedge a little bit more towards red. If we get enough fixing, we can make that work. Sphinx of the Steel Wind I don't love. Again, unless we were going for Tinker or some other way to cheat it into play. I think I'm just going to take Terminate. See where that takes me. It might not make my deck. Right now it's probably below 50% to make my deck, but we'll see what happens. Trying to think if it's possible for us to pivot away from black as our secondary color. It's unlikely because a lot of our good black cards are cheap. Ooh, Scarab God, that's a nice finisher. Wonder when they added that to the cube, but I guess there hasn't really been a vintage cube since this card came out. There's a legacy cube. I don't remember if that card was in there or not. Metamorph's also good, but Scarab God's pretty much exactly what we're looking for. A little bit expensive. I don't know if it's going to be fast enough for this cube, but if we can grind the game to a halt, that's going to win us the game. No problem. I guess technically that's a way to reanimate fatties early. We can combo with the discard outlet like Jace. I guess Jace is our only discard outlet right now. We could find more if we wanted to. Probably not going to be a high priority, but You never know. Trinket Mage goes and fetches me a Mana Vault, and maybe we could pick up one more good cheap artifact to get, or we could just take a Wandering Fumarole, which will help solidify my splash, make it more likely to play this Terminate. So sorry Trinket Mage, I do like you, but fixing I think is more important. Tamio came back. That's fine, I'll probably make my deck. So again, I'm feeling pretty good on the threats side of things. I just want to make sure we have enough cheap interaction, which I'm a little concerned about. We ended up not taking any hand disruption. I thought we took a Thoughtseize earlier, but I guess we passed up on it. But right now we're gonna possibly struggle if our opponent has a quick or synergistic start, and we're just kind of stuck playing slow mid-range cards, which I don't love. Keep that in the 1-drop slot for now. Revoker's playable, but this isn't really a deck I'd want to be playing it. I don't see much use for Godless Shrine, unless I ended up with a Flooded Strand or something. Then we could play it just as a way to fetch up black with a blue-white land or whatever. I'll just take a Revoker though. You never know. Probably just side it in if I play against some problematic Planeswalker or something. Nothing for me here. So yeah, Hero's Downfall, Mana Drain, Doomblade, just cheap 2 and 3, even 1 mana interaction. Or just more cheaty cards like another piece of Power 9. It's my short list for the wish list. Lightning Strike I'm not going to splash. Much worse of a splash than Terminate, because Lightning Strike is not always going to get its man, but Terminate will. And I'm still not even sure if I'm going to play this Terminate. But it's starting to creep up into the slightly more likely camp. We're already considering the red splash, and it won't take too much more work to be able to cast it. And Terminate just works so much better with our deck, just because it's so cheap. Works with Jace. We need the interaction, which is the main thing. It's just the lack of interaction we have right now. Alright, what did we get here? Well, I said I'd have to get lucky to get a Tinker, but we got one. This is a pretty good pack though. Inbaturok is a good cheap disruption spell. Packrat's fine, not what I'm going to take though. Opposition's good, not so much in this deck. Bloodstained Mire is pretty valuable, although I guess it doesn't actually do too much for us because we don't have a blue-black dual land. We passed up on those. We already passed up on pretty much all the good Tinker targets. We passed up on an Inkwell Leviathan, a Sphinx of the Steel Wind, a Mindslaver. So we'd pretty much just be taking it and hoping to get something like a Blightsteel Colossus. We also don't have that much to sacrifice, just a Mana Vault and a Baleful Strix. Probably still worth taking though, just because the upside is so high if the pieces come together. Nothing else in here is something that we necessarily need. There's cards I wouldn't mind taking, but nothing I'm going to miss too much. More than I would miss a Tinker if the Tinker deck came together, if that makes sense. Memory Jar's good. Ooh, there's a Mana Drain. Wormcoil Engine's also good. I guess Memory Jar this isn't really a great deck for. It's a powerful card, but it's better in like Storm or cards that care about, you know, comboing off at the graveyard or whatever. Kolaghan's Command is possibly splashable, but it's fringe. Kind of the same camp as Terminate as far as a splash card goes. If we were base black-red, obviously this card is great, but when it's hard to cast and it's a very situational card, you really want to have it on command, as it were, pun intended. But Mana Drain's exactly what we want. Here we have Blood Crypt, helps us splash even more. Pestermite, if we wanted to bank on the fact that we were going to open like Kiki-Jiki or Splinter Twin, but then that would force us to dip even further into red, so that's unlikely. Hypnotic Spectre, no. I think this is an easy Blood Crypt. Ooh, there's a Blightsteel. Is it time to move in? Oh man, this pack is so good for us though. We've got Remand, Impulse, and Search for Azcanta, all of which are great in this deck. See, the thing is, I would probably take Blightsteel if I had more cheap artifacts to sacrifice away early in the game, but considering that we're so thin on that front, I'm still unsure if this Tinker is going to work out. And I really want to try out Search for Azcanta. I haven't actually played with this card in Cube before, but it seems very powerful. And it's just so good in this deck. It's kind of exactly what we're looking for. It's like early card filtering and late game win condition, essentially. I like Force of Will. We have quite a few blue cards. Also of note, Toxic Deluge, Counterspell, both of which I'd be happy to play. Too bad, Pack 2 is pretty thin for us, but now we're getting all the good cards all clumped together. It's a little disappointing, but Force of Will is great. It makes me feel a little less worried about what my opponent's doing. Now I have fair amount more interaction with them. Time Twister I think is a little bit overrated. This isn't really the deck for it. I like Vidalcan Shackles though. We are going to have to make sure we play enough islands for it though, which looks like it might be a little bit of a struggle. Although I guess maybe not too bad. Just have to play. We have to trim down on cards like Necrotal that are harder to cast. Like Black is not going to be an easy feat if we want to pair it up with Vidalcan Shackles. But this card is powerful. Bone Shredder's good. Is It Signet's good. Thirst for Knowledge is fine. I'm going to take Is It Signet, and then on the off chance that we wheel the Blightsteel Colossus, we can consider running the Tinker package. So now I feel pretty good about the red splash. We got, what, 4 pieces of fixing. Still haven't seen a playable fetch land for us, though, besides that Bloodstained Mire, which doesn't actually do much for us. It only gets black-red anyway. Hallowed Fountain doesn't do anything for me. It's no better than a basic island. With the one exception of Painful Truths, but I don't think that's enough of a reason to play a shock land. If this was a pain-free dual land, if it was a Tundra, I would definitely play it for that reason. But the 2 life could matter in this deck. This is 25 playables. We'll have to cut some. Obviously right now the first cut would be Tinker. Ooh, I like Thing in the Ice. That kind of does everything we're looking for. It's an early blocker and it's a win condition bundled up with disruption in the mid game. Haven't done a count on instants and sorceries, but I imagine we have a pretty good amount. Vraska is the only color that we can't really afford to splash, even though it's a powerful card. So I guess I'll take him to Turok. Probably not play it though. Black's going to be a problem. I'm already considering cutting this Necrotal just for mana considerations, because we're going to have to have a fair number of islands. So let's make cuts assuming that this is the final list. I can do it without Gurmag Angler. I can do without Tinker. All of these are good. These are fine. I can get away with 16 land, I think, because of the 2 pieces of mana ramp. These expensive cards can stay. Cut the Necrotal. This is 23 currently, so we could either play 17 land or add another spell to the deck. I'll wait till the end of the draft to make that determination. This is looking pretty good. Just a generic good mid-range value deck. Coil Engine, I mean it's playable, but I wouldn't play it if I didn't have a specific reason to. I don't think it's good enough to justify the Tinker package. Dak Faden's powerful. I'm wondering if it's worth splashing. My inclination is no, but maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's worth stretching the mana base further for when it really isn't that much more of a stretch. We're already splashing red. Alright, I'm sold. So I think this is it. I also missed that we have the Revoker, which we could use as a Tinker enabler if we wanted to. Right, Impulse came back, so that we can make room for. This is 25, so we still have to cut one card. I think once I get all the spells separated by type, I'll have a better idea of what we're looking at. Wow, and Counterspell came back? Jeez. Alright, we've got some decisions to make then. I'm not married to this Nicol Bolas either. I don't think we necessarily need it to win. It's just a very good card. Pitchable to Force of Will. It's definitely castable. Bring the Necrotal back just to look at it, because once I play the deck out properly, I'll have a better idea of what our deck's trying to do, even though I generally know how it's going to go. This isn't a great Mana Vault deck, funny enough, because a lot of the times we're just going to want to be holding up our mana for like a cheap spell, like we have blue-blue counterspell and blue-blue counterspell, but obviously just like ramping out turn 2 Planeswalkers is going to be worth having it in. So I'm like very strongly considering cutting the Nicol Bolas. Might be wrong though. We'll have to think about this Vidalcan Shackles too once I get an idea of what my mana base looks like. Because that might be a little bit problematic. But considering we're trying to jam a bunch of blue-blue spells, we're probably going to have a good number of islands. Although, funny enough, the Fumarole and the Tar Pit are going to take away from my island count even though they tap for blue. So if we assume we're cutting this, let's see, let's move the lands out for now. Definitely got to make some cuts. Let's bring these up into the spell for the creature slot. So currently we have to make a minimum of 2 cuts. And I still think 16 land is acceptable because we have the 2 pieces of ramp. We have good cheap card filtering, and we have the Search for Iskanta. I wouldn't go below that though. So we just need to make 2 cuts. Repeal is a possibility, but it's one of our few pieces of cheap interaction at instant speed. Once something already gets onto the board, rather. The others being Terminate, Dismember. So I think I want to keep that in. Again, I think we could win without the Nicol Bolas. It's just very clunky and expensive. We have several cards that can win the game on their own. I think that makes sense to me. Just gonna kind of rely on our more mid-rangey planeswalkers to get the job done. Jace included. Is that wrong? Maybe we do just want to have all the win conditions we can get. I'm just not sure what our other cuts are. I like having the counter spells. I don't want to cut any of those. The shackles. I guess we should first consider what our mana base will look like. So let's look at our mana, our lands. How many black sources do we need, first of all? We have 3 currently, without adding any basics. So if we added like 3 more, then how many mountains do we need? We have 3 currently, plus the Izzet Signet. So we could do 2 mountains, that would be 6. 6 mountain is okay. And then how many islands would that leave us with? Let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that would be 7 island. It's a little sketchy for the Vidalcan Shackles. How many blue sources is that total? 6, 7, 8, 9, plus the Signet, plus technically the Search for Azcanta can give us an extra blue source in the late game if we got stuck on 1 or whatever. I think I might cut the Shackles. Feels weird, but I think just with our current mana setup, it's kind of necessary. And then for the final cut, I'm still looking at Nicol Bolas. Simply because I am starting to worry about our ability to win the game. We don't have a bona fide win condition, just a bunch of powerful cards, besides I guess Scarab God. It's like Scarab God, Jace Ultimate, like any of our Planeswalkers ultimating will generally get the job done, but don't know how likely it is to happen. Thinking the Ice could win games, but that's a little thin. How easy is it to cast Nicol Bolas also? 6 black sources for a black spell. I mean, it's late enough in the game that it'd probably work out fine. So that leaves Painful Truths. I love this card so much, I don't think I can cut it in the 3-color mid-range deck. Impulse maybe, that card's so good too though. I'm just going to cut Nicol Bolas, and then we'll make the determination once we play the games if we need another win condition. But we're just going to save that and go to round 1.